Do you hate painting backgrounds? Me too, and I learned the most amazing technique and way to conceptualize your backgrounds to really improve them and make them a lot easier to think through and paint. And I am going to share with you 4 techniques that I learned in the last year that really helped move me along on my painting journey, and I think it'll really help you. Hi, I'm Rachel, and my focus on this channel is to paint loose, painterly, dreamy animals, but I do throw in something unique once in a while. Also, be sure to stay tuned for a bonus insight that I had that really helped me learn how to work a painting instead of having it work me. All right, the first technique that I want to share with you is this new insight that I got from John Lovett, who also has video tutorials on his website, and he does beautiful work. And he uses a lot of scribbles in his work. And so I've been kind of playing with this technique, trying out scribbles on my work, and I really like how it adds a painterly detail, a little touch of interest to a painting, but it doesn't overwhelm it and draw attention away from whatever you're really trying to draw attention to. For me, that's usually eyes, and I like to use the Prismacolor Premier Fine Line Marker that's archival and makes really nice little fine details like little black lines. It's archival and it's waterproof, so it's made for art, it's made for line drawing, but it's also really great for scribbles. And also, my other favorite pen to use for scribbles is a Signo Uniball broad white gel pen. But those are great pens as well to use for making little scribbles, making little fine line details that just add interest to your painting without overwhelming it and taking the attention away from what you're really interested in showcasing. Okay, the thing that I am so most excited about learning the most in the last 12 months is the Rembrandt principle. Thank you to James Gurney. He has 2 books out and he does a lot of fantasy painting. And I would have never bought this book without the suggestion of another YouTuber here. And his name is Tom Shepard. And be sure to check out his watercolor channel if you like painting animals. He does beautiful work. And he was talking about this book that he found by James Gurney and all the wonderful insights he got. And one of his favorites was the Rembrandt principle. And what the Rembrandt principle is, James Gurney was really studying Rembrandt's painting of a windmill. It's the official name of the painting is called The Mill. And you'll notice that the 4 blades of the windmill are different values: light, medium, and dark. And he was looking at it and he says he had an insight that the way that Rembrandt made the background interact with the values of the background interact with the values on each blade of the windmill was really interesting, because there were some light areas of the blade up against light areas of the background. Then there was dark blades against the light background, and there were light, let me get it right, there were light blades against the dark background, and there were dark blades against the dark background, making it look like there were lost edges. So there were lots of lost and found edges created by the main subject of the painting meeting the background and how those edges interact by having different pairings of values in the background with the foreground subject. Does that make any sense at all? Let me show you an example of what I did with a little pig that I was painting, and this was the first painting I did after I learned the Rembrandt principle, and I was really just using this little piggy painting to practice these ideas. So I made sure like the white forehead area of the pig had a darker background behind it, and then there's light areas of the pig that have light areas of the background, and then dark areas of the pig that have darker background. And I made sure that I had all 4 of those pairings, and I loved how it made my painting just look, you know, like that painterly look. You go into a gallery and you see a painting and you can tell it's professionally done. It's just something about it, it's beautiful. And this is one of the tricks painters use. And I don't know if they're conscious of it, because I've gone back and looked at some of my paintings and realized, hey, I was doing that. I just didn't know. And it's so great to have the concept now in my head that I can share it with all of you. So thank you so much for to James Gurney for putting all those ideas together in a cohesive thought. If you would like to watch any of the paintings featured in today's videos or any of my other videos in the last 2 or 3 years, consider joining my Patreon or my YouTube membership, where you can join and then be able to watch over 60 tutorials from start to finish with full explanation and downloadable traceables, reference photos, and supply lists. As a special thank you for watching that little shameless plug for my Patreon, which, sorry not sorry, has totally saved my beep in the pandemic so I can work from home. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart to those of you who support me there. I'm going to give you a little more in-depth explanation of how I use the Rembrandt principle on this chimp. I saw that I was missing a light subject edge against a light background, so I decided to create one for this chimp. I chose the fairly static area of his back because it is a somewhat boring straight up and down edge, so I thought that was a perfect place to scrub out a light against light pairing. I took my stiff scrubber and basically erased both the background and his back. And here's a bonus tip. You can also use white gouache to paint over both the subject and background for a similar effect. If you go back to the peacock, you'll see that I did that in the neck area there. And now it's time to share my next favorite technique I acquired in the last year, and that came to me from the wonderful channel Watercolor Pour with Buffy Kaufman, who had a video showing her using a stencil in her background floral watercolor that looked amazing. So in my excitement, I proceeded to spend a small fortune on stencils, some of which I sent out to my $18 Patreon students, by the way, and found all kinds of cool ways to use them. You can put masking on them and press a pattern of masking on. You can use a magic eraser with them. You can use a stencil brush with them, and you could probably even trace a line drawing or scribble in them, which I will certainly try. And by the way, to those of you who like to leave little chastising comments for sharing other artist techniques, just remember what Pablo Picasso said: good artists borrow, great artists steal. However, with my conscience about the size of a house, I don't like to steal. So I want to be very honest about where I get my ideas, because I do want artists to get the credit they deserve. And I'm also here to teach you all how to paint. And part of learning how to paint is learning to observe and use other artists' techniques and incorporate the techniques of other artists into your own art. So I want to show how I develop and grow as an artist, so you can also learn how to fast forward your own artistic journey as much as possible. So anyway, here's an example of a challenge recently presented to me in this commission of a Scottish fold cat. He was sitting on an iron table with lots of details I wasn't sure how to capture. So if I could do it over again, I would start with painting masking on my stencil you see here, but I didn't think of that until later. But a stencil and tape techniques really helped a lot. So here you see me using a stencil, and I'm dotting on darker paint, and I'm using a little stiff stencil brush, which, by the way, is also a great brush for other textures. So they're really cheap, so I would encourage you to have one of those in your paintbrush arsenals. But here I'm using that stencil brush for actually what it was designed for, which is putting paint on a stencil. And so I'm putting this dark paint on to show the dark foliage underneath the ironwork. And then I decided that that wasn't really working the way I wanted it to, that I needed the ironwork actually to be lighter than the foliage underneath. So I got tape, and you see me doing this kind of labor intensive but quite effective way of kind of creating a stencil-like tool using tape and then scrubbing in between the two pieces of tape to make those lighter, what will become the lighter lines of the ironwork. And just remember, if you want to use scrubbing techniques like I like to do, you've got to use good paper like Arches Cold Press, 140 pound. Also, Hahnemühle, the collection paper, is good for these techniques. You've got to use good watercolor paper like that. And you also should use paints that are not staining. Stay away from your phthalos, stay away from your alizarin crimsons, and other paint colors like sap green that are really staining. They do not erase well. But ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, and aureolin are all good paint colors to use if you want to use scrubbing techniques to scrub out mistakes and make little fixes that way. All right, I just wanted to show you the end of the journey of this ironwork. Since I started the journey with you, I decided to take some dark paint and then paint in the details around some of the ironwork to really make everything pop, and put some dark shadows along the bottom of some of the ironwork to make it look actually like ironwork. So I was really happy with how this table came out. I might still do some more. This painting is not done as of this recording. Okay, the last breakthrough I feel like I had came to me from Denise Sodden, and that is you can paint on dry paper. You paint a few marks and then you go in with a brush of clean, clear water and you blend that, and you might completely blend it or you might partially blend parts of the marks to make really interesting textures and also to get nice value changes from dark to light. And one of the ways that I often paint is to paint a big clear wash where I want to paint and then drop paint into that, and that's called charging. And that's a very common way to paint. But there's another approach that you can take that might give you more interesting textures. Sometimes you do want to have very smooth, dreamy, soft transitions, like say painting clouds in a sky or painting a really soft cat, a soft long-haired cat. But say you're painting a more short-haired animal, for example, and you want it to look watercolory, but also a little more controlled. And that's when it might be better to paint on dry paper and then go in with a clean clear water brush that's usually not dripping, but it has a little bit of clear water and it acts kind of as a blender, and you touch the edges with that paintbrush of the marks that you just made, and it can blend it, or it can make interesting textures. And it's a really fun technique to play with that I've been playing with more and more, or making a concerted effort to incorporate that technique into my paintings to add some more textural interest. Another great resource that I recently found right here on YouTube was the Art Coach channel. And he is an oil painter and he does tutorials, but I've learned so many good tips from him and watched him from his process and how he works a painting. So this is another one of the insights that I want to share that really helped me know how to work my paintings instead of letting them work me. And in his oil paintings, he says this is just how paintings should evolve. You put down a color, you put down another color, you put down another color or value, and then when you see them all together on the canvas, or in our case, the watercolor paper, you'll see how they balance each other out and then make adjustments as needed. He kind of called that his push-pull of the process of painting. So it's not just that you paint in a linear fashion and you get all the way to the end and you have a beautiful painting. It's you put down some paint, you look how it all hangs together, and then you adjust according to what the painting needs. So this is a really important insight that I had in the last year, is the importance of the push-pull of a painting. Do you want to say goodbye, Kitty? You're going to talk whenever you want to, huh? Okay. Bye, everybody. And now go watercolor your world.